Welcome, I'm Rogers Anderson, Williamson County's mayor, and as we travel around the boundaries of Williamson County, we always try to pick different exciting topics and meet some of the employees that we've got and directors that we've got. And today we're fortunate enough to have Mac Purdy with us, our director of our EMA. Thanks for being with us today.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
I understand you've got a little sickness going on in your family, so we won't keep you tied up the whole day-to-day doing TV things, but it's that time of year when the children get sick and bring it home to the parents.
That's right.
Or the other way around. So, Mac, you've made a total career of being in EMA, and oftentimes people are watching this, they'll catch me at the different grocery stores and say, well, how does one get involved in emergency management things that we do? And they may have a grandson, they may have a son that's involved, and so kind of take us through your history, how you first got involved, and of course you went on to Vanderbilt and now become the director of everything we do here in Williamson County for the EMA. Of course that sounds highly important, but it's absolutely useless unless you get all the other cities and everybody else involved. But talk to us a little bit about Mac Purdy and where you got started and how you got started and what led to the many good things that we're doing here in Williamson County.
Certainly. I think I like to say I studied in school, and one of my passions is really leadership and the way organizations and work, the way teams come together and the way leaders impact organizations. And that's what I got to study in school. And I kind of was able to take that and match it with a hobby of this world of emergency response, and somehow that's become a career. And I think the things that started me off primarily is probably my background in scouting, first aid and survival and preparedness in those respects, and the different badges and things that you do. And I'm still a big scouter and getting to do Cub Scouts with my son now and those kinds of things. And that led me to volunteer firefighting and becoming an EMT and a volunteer firefighter, which led to an internship while I was in school in emergency management and jobs from there. I think the background I had in understanding how the community works and serving the community, desire to look at the way organizations work and leaders impact organizations, both on the government side, from a little bit of time in the Army National Guard here in Tennessee, and those different things all kind of come together to influence that. For people wanting to be involved, I think there's just a wide open number of paths to get involved. Probably is that volunteer aspect, especially in those high school, college years, of finding a way to plug in, whether that's the American Red Cross or with one of our rescue squad or volunteer fire departments, amateur radio, and the list kind of keeps going from there. There are degree programs. I kind of tell students that come and talk to us, or our staff tells them to kind of go major and focus on what they like to do and then go apply it in the workforce. But there are definitely lots of opportunities, both in the business side. They call it business continuity, but it's emergency management just the same, and as well as the things we get to do day to day in building emergency management programs, like you said, all those different relationships with all our different partners.
When you think about emergency management, I mean, it's an activity you do lots and lots of planning, and you've got a great staff. You couple it with all the other activities that go under this umbrella of public safety. I mean, it's from the sheriff's department, even though the sheriff is an elected position and for the most part does what it's important for law enforcement, community security of that. But without all of these different agencies working together to make it a homogeneous environment for our community, from just the phone calls that come into the 911 center here in our administrative complex, or come in at Brentwood or Franklin. But emergency management is a all-encompassing agency that oversees so many of these and pulls them together during those critical mass situations. As I said, lots of planning and training goes in, and you hope you never use it.
Absolutely. You know, we were at our state association conference a few weeks ago, and one of the presenters, one of our speakers, was the state emergency management director from Mississippi, who been in numerous different roles, from local government to state government and emergency management. And he said something that I think we'll talk about a lot, is that emergency management is a profession of professions. It's made up of many different professions. And so when you look at individuals who spend their time coming out of one profession, but then they start spending more and more of their time focusing on that, managing that risk, that readiness, that preparedness for their organization, they're really doing emergency management. But they may be an engineer, they may be in a utility, or they may work in schools or law enforcement or the fire service, but they begin spending more of their time doing that emergency management.
You know, in May of 2010, we had a catastrophic incident that all of Middle Tennessee, for the most part, was involved. It was a huge flood, and I know we've had this conversation with just us and Bill Jorgensen and many, many others, Molly, all involved, that we got through it. We probably weren't as prepared as we needed to be, but we took something that was so catastrophic, so devastating, particularly in Davidson County, up around the river. Now, we had our issues with the Harpeth and all the rain and the flooding that occurred from that, but we took something from a negative standpoint and said, let's get something that's better than what we've got. Let's do something about that. It was about that same time we were doing focus groups for, I think it was a year and a half, if my memory serves, maybe 2 years, that we were focusing and our attention on how could we be the best? How could we develop and pull cities and counties and state and federal agencies all together and have a better, a more seamless, if that's good English, of all of these entities together. And, well, that's really where you come in.
It is. It's interesting to look at our small staff, 6 or 8, that focus in that emergency management mission day to day, and look at, 100+ people, really, when you put the team together across the community, from county government, city government, to our utility partners, to nonprofits, the volunteer, the faith-based, to the private sector. And they get to spend pieces of their time on that emergency management, disaster readiness mission, whether that's 5% of their time or 2 or 80%. And I think one of our jobs is to kind of take all of those pieces and weave them together into a coherent program, so that we really are focused on that day to day. I think one of the things that we've been talking about downstairs is that this is not the emergency management agency staff. This isn't my or our program. That we're caretakers of this program. It really belongs to the community. It's under authority like that given to the county mayor and the sheriff and others. Primarily the county mayor in Tennessee has that emergency management authority, but the program and the readiness there is really, it's for the community. And so it's like you said, looking back at the May floods or tornadoes in 2008 and other things that have happened or that could happen, how do we ensure that we're continually getting more ready, to getting better prepared?
I think most everyone knows, or has at least heard, we're in the process of relocating all of our basement activities, the 911, your department, out to a new location off from Beasley Drive. The structure for the shell is 99% finished. The inside, the panels, the doors and that. But now all the hardware, all the electronic side, hopefully all of that will be ready for the spring of 2016 for a new location, a very, very modern, high-tech, up-to-date, wind-resistant facility, not just for our day-to-day operations, but for also the untimely event when something does occur, and it will occur again, another tornado, another flood, that we are systematically prepared. As you said, we're ready for that next event. And again, it's just amazing to me how far we've come just in a few short years. Now, for others, it probably seems like an eternity. Why can't we get there? How we get it? And we've allocated more resources for that, or we've redirected a lot of the resources to do that. So the taxpayers should feel safer, more secure than we have in years gone past. Not just through the structure, but through the programs that will be run through that new structure. And when we built the structure, we built it in mind of being, it's good for 50 years. Now, we may have to add on, and we more than likely will. But you'll bring in a lot of these outside agencies, the utility companies, the TEMAs, that Williamson County will be the stronghold to be able to get a lot of these things done during an emergency.
You know, that the facility and, you know, many of the things that we're working on as we looked at the design and learning from others who've already done similar projects to it, the things we looked at is we have to build it for that disaster. But we need it to help us get ready for that disaster in the things that we do every day. Article that quoted Craig Fugate, the FEMA director. He was the Florida Emergency Management Director for years and now leads FEMA as the FEMA administrator. And he talked about that too often we plan for those events that are routine or that we can already handle. And so it's very easy for us sitting in our role, even doing emergencies and having to look at emergency hazards and threats every day, to kind of get complacent and look at the routine, the things that, well, we handled that one, so we must be able to handle the next one. And his quote, his kind of caution to us is really our job's to plan for the things that are going to likely overwhelm us. And that's kind of hard to think about, is to realize that there is always an event that is going to tax our resources and our capability to handle it with just Williamson County resources. And that's one of the things that we really look to in our planning and in our exercising and in the way we train and talk about it, is that we need to not be afraid to ask for help when we need it, and probably earlier than we think, and be ready to share and send help when it's there. And the building and lots of the different programs that we've been working on, we hope, help us remind us that we're not preparing for a routine event. If we're prepared for that event, that whether you call it catastrophic or that is larger than life or seemingly, then those routine events, you know, fall into place. They become the day-to-day. South Carolina recently had one of those events, and we were able to, with those partnerships through the state and the state-to-state mutual aid agreement, send some swiftwater rescue teams from Franklin and Brentwood and the Sheriff's Department that were actually, many of those kind of born out of the May 2010 floods. And that ability to do that mutual aid state-to-state and help our neighbors while getting that real-world disaster experience and training is just, it's just a great experience, and it's great to be able to help in those times.
So just recently, and I mean in the last 30 days, your department was the recipient of an award, an accreditation. But it was not just for your department. So talk to us a little bit about EMAP and how this got developed and the time frame that it went through, And I guess it's a time to kind of brag a little bit from your side to the community side that we are now certifiably prepared according to some national standards.
Certainly. I think EMAP, or the Emergency Management Accreditation Program, is basically an independent accrediting entity. Works out of the Council of State Governments, and it takes a set of national standards. There's 64 standard elements that they say, and that the nation says, this is the yardstick. This is your measuring tool for your emergency management program. Works for states, for local governments, universities, some federal agencies. The Corps of Engineers have taken some of their district offices through it.
Could be even private business.
It could be private businesses.
Out of the ordinary, but you could have
You
that.
absolutely could, definitely. And so, and takes their emergency management program and sets it against those standards, and then brings a team of 5 or 6 independent peer assessors. So these are emergency managers that have at a minimum of 5 years experience, and usually much more than that come in, and basically you say, here, look at our program, grade our papers, look in all the corners, and see how we measure up against the standards. And the different pieces of that in and of itself can be humbling and a little frightening to kind of set your work out there and have somebody that you don't know from, it can't be anybody from Tennessee. They do a great job with the ethics of that and of making sure that the people that come in and are looking don't know you. And yet it's a great experience to prepare for that. It allowed our staff to take a look at our program in a way that we wouldn't have been able to do otherwise. And I think in that the staff, Jonathan and Kate and Holly, Butch and others, really poured themselves into this project and dedicated a lot of their time and effort. And really, it's a testament to their work. Not just for a couple of weeks, but really over the last 4 or 5, and for a couple of them, 10 years. And what I think, as well as that kind of independent peer evaluation that stands out to me about the EMAP accreditation is the fact that when a university or a high school or many of our other agencies and departments get accredited, it's that agency or department. Their mission drives their accreditation, educating students, law enforcement, firefighting, whatever that is. But emergency management accreditation is a little different because, like you said, we can have our 6 or 8 staff members ready and prepared, but we can't respond to the event all by ourselves. It has to be that coordination with all those different partners. And so really it's the program that gets accredited. And that takes it a whole nother layer outside of us and says what they're asking us is, do we have a program that ensures that we can coordinate with our 6 cities and towns, that we work with our utilities and our nonprofits and all the different county agencies that have resources that need to come together during that large-scale event or emergency or disaster, and can we bring those resources to bear to respond and recover from that event? That's really what they're evaluating. Readiness is really hard to measure. It's hard to say, yes, we're ready. And so I think EMAP and the accreditation standards is one way for us to take a look at ourselves and have somebody else look at ourselves and say, okay, you're in that process of getting better, better and better each day.
Well, I appreciate the explanation for it, and at the end of the day, to show you just how prestigious and very difficult it is. Number one, the time involved, and there is some resources that are allocated to it, but it could be during the normal working days. And so it's not like you're having to pay overtime to get it. But it's not a frequent award in that a couple of dozen, 27, if my memory serves me, 26 in the United States.
There are 27 local governments, cities or counties across the country, that have achieved this accreditation.
So my statement that I said earlier, that our community, and I mean all of Williamson County and the whole region really, is one of 27 in the United States of America that have been able to pass the rigorous testing and the accreditation process to say for the next 5 years they won't be back unless we just blow it up. And it's something you're going to have to work hard to keep it.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's like getting the Moody's AAA bond rating or the Standard & Poor's. It's one thing to get it, it's another to keep it, because you've got this balancing act. But to the community, what it's saying, we're ready, we're prepared, or at least we should be. And now we're going into a new facility. We'll be able to take that information we've got and even promote it even more. But it does give a litmus test to the standards that is occurring in our county as compared to someone else. We're not just giving it lip service. We're actually demonstrating and showing through proficiency and efficiencies that when something happens, we're ready, we're prepared, and won't get us over the hump. But we've already done our homework on so many of these things. 64 standards and I don't know how many sub-standards and all that. It was a mountain of books, paperwork. But it was so satisfying to be able to sit in the audience the night that this award was given to you and to your team and to the staff and the other folks that attended at the other areas from Franklin and Brentwood and from our ambulance, that those men were just as proud. They were part of that. And they may have been directed to EMA of Williamson County, but there's no way to get that without everybody working together. So my hat is off to all of these different agencies that had something to do with this, and every one of them did.
Our readiness our preparedness and the accreditation isn't possible without those partnerships and those relationships with the Sheriff's Office in Franklin and Brentwood and Nolensville and Thompson Station and Spring Hill and Fairview and Middle Tennessee Electric, and the list goes on and on and on. Williams County Schools and Franklin Special School District. Those partnerships and relationships within our community, one of the buzzwords in emergency management right now, I've mentioned Craig Fugate, the FEMA director earlier, that he keeps talking about is the whole community. That from our individual family preparedness, my ability to kind of weather the storm as an individual or for me and my family, all the way to those of us sitting in the Emergency Operations Center making policy decisions or directing those resources or coordinating assistance from the state or federal government and all the little pieces in between. That's really where our readiness comes from.
I agree with that. I think all of us have a duty and a responsibility to protect our own. Our own being defined as one person, such as myself, or a household family of 5 or 6. And we encourage everyone to be ready and be prepared. Unfortunately, that does not always happen. We're too busy with other things to think about something like that. So that's where that burden is on your shoulders through proper education, continuing, and I do mean continuing education, to let people know that the basics, just pure water, has to be had, but in those untimely events, those catastrophic conditions that apply, it's oftentimes hurry up to the local hardware store to get the products you may need, when really and truly it could be avoided by good preparedness. But again, it's education. A lot of folks just do not know that. But then I think about all the things that go into your department, the emergency management, and we only have 3 minutes left, but you talk about our schools. 10, 15 years ago, the things we're doing now to make schools safer, to be a safe haven for our children and our grandchildren, we didn't even really consider that 15 years ago, the avenues we're having to take today. It is a very costly, because of the world in which we live in today, just to be ensured that your children, my grandchildren, can go to school and get home safe. The bus ride to and from, once at school, providing a safe place for them, the health of that individual in the school. And oh, by the way, we do have support staff that we call teachers and assistants and all the layers. That all falls upon the shoulders of people being prepared. Schools have got to do their part. You've got to do your part, but we all have to work together.
I think that role of that continual preparedness, us continuing to take those 64 different elements of the EMAP program, the different areas of our community, and continuing to move them forward. One of the ways we talk about it is we say that our goal is to always be ready for that event when it happens, but that we're never finished preparing, so that our accreditation, or something like our accreditation, becomes not an end, but a starting point. It becomes the foundation upon which we're going to build our readiness going forward. And it's not just one of us, but through those relationships, through those partnerships, through working with schools and families and individuals, that's how we're going to be ready for that event when it does occur.
I still remember when Katrina hit in Louisiana, and I've just got a minute left to say this. So I remember when Katrina hit, that who would think that a little town in Franklin, Tennessee, and Williamson County, and Brentwood, and all the other cities would be involved in a situation that occurred hundreds of miles away from us. But our whole emergency management team is made up of team members throughout different jurisdictions and different state aid agreements that we have. And in those national crises, it's almost like the old civil defense days when I was a young boy. That was the buzzword. We don't hear that anymore, but we do hear about the success stories, and pat you on the back and your department for a job well done here in our county, and thank you for what you do.
Thank you very much.
So, Mac Purdy, our EMA director, outstanding department. Looking forward to working with them, and know that Williamson County and all of our cities and residents are safer because of the efforts of the men and women downstairs. Have a good day. I'm Rogers Anderson.